Good evening, and thank you for joining us. Responding in kind to U.S. President Donald Trump's additional 10% tariff on Chinese goods, Beijing has launched a series of countermeasures. They include tariffs of 10 to 15% on multiple imports from the U.S. starting next Monday. Also on the way are export controls of rare metals to America. In a swift response, Beijing announces that starting February 10th, tariffs will be imposed on multiple imports originating in the U.S. A 15% import levy will be slapped on coal and liquefied natural gas products. Crude oil, agricultural machinery, and large engine cars will face an additional 10% tariff. Meanwhile, the Commerce Ministry and the Customs Administration are also rolling out export controls on rare metals, including tungsten, critical to the production of high-tech products to safeguard China's security and interests. 25 kinds of rare metal products and technologies will be subject to export control with immediate effect as well. The Commerce Ministry also added 2 American companies to an unreliable entities list. One is PVH Group, which owns fashion brands Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger. Beijing began investigating PVH Group last year after the company allegedly boycotted the use of Xinjiang cotton. Another firm is biotech company Illumina, which has offices in China. The listing will bar them from engaging in China-related import or export activities and from making new investments in the country. Also, China's State Administration for Market Regulation said it is investigating Google on suspicion of violating antitrust laws. Speaking to journalists in New York, Fu Chong, China's ambassador to the United Nations, stressed there is no winner in the trade war.
We do believe that this is in violation of the WTO rules, so that's why China is filing a complaint at the WTO. And let me also emphasize that there is no winner in a trade war. And we do hope that the U.S. should look at its own problems, really solve its.
U.S. President Donald Trump has held off his 25% tariff threats against Mexico and Canada for 1 month as he holds further negotiations with both countries regarding border and crime enforcement. This as European leaders warn that the U.S. president's threat to expand tariffs to the EU risks igniting a trade war that would harm consumers on both sides of the Atlantic. Tracy Furness has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump said he had a very friendly conversation with Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum, leading to both sides agreeing to an immediate pause of tariffs for 1 month to continue negotiations. Trump said Sheinbaum agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border of Mexico and the U.S. to stop the flow of illegal aliens and illicit drugs such as fentanyl from crossing the border.
I had a great talk with Mexico, and we had President Sheinbaum is a woman. I like her very much. We've had good relationships, but we have to stop fentanyl from coming in, whether I like somebody or not, and we have to stop the illegal aliens from coming in. And they've agreed to put in 10,000 soldiers permanently, like forever, 10,000 soldiers at their side of the border and stop fentanyl and illegal aliens from coming into our country.
While leaving an NHL game in Washington, Trump told reporters he also had a very good call with Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
Are you still doing the tariffs tonight?
European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said the European Union would respond firmly if faced with challenges from the United States after Trump said Sunday the EU was next for imposing sweeping tariffs.
We also recognize potential challenges in the relationship with the United States, and we are ready for that. When targeted, unfairly or arbitrarily, the European Union will respond firmly. This weekend, we witnessed how steep tariffs were imposed on Canada and Mexico. Those tariffs raise business costs, they harm workers and consumers. They create unnecessary economic disruption and drive inflation. We do not see much good coming out of this. So we prioritize productive discussions and engage early.
Tracy Furness, TVB News.
Meanwhile, Trump has signed an executive order directing officials to take steps to start developing a government-owned investment fund. Trump said the fund could be used to profit from the short video app TikTok if he's successful at finding it a U.S. buyer. On Monday, Trump signed an executive order directing his Treasury and Commerce secretaries to create a sovereignty wealth fund for the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent told reporters afterwards the fund will be set up within 12 months. Earlier on his first day in office, Trump signed another executive order to grant TikTok until early April to find an approved buyer or face a U.S. ban. A San Francisco-based artificial intelligence startup called Perplexity AI presented a proposal last month to TikTok's China-based parent company ByteDance. If successful, the proposal would allow the U.S. government to have a sizable stake in an entity that combines TikTok's U.S. platform with Perplexity's business. China's UN ambassador says a Security Council meeting in a fortnight is the perfect time for Foreign Minister Wang Yi to meet U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Wang will chair the Security Council session on February 18th, with China taking the presidency of the 15-member body. The newly installed Secretary of State could attend. Face-to-face talks between the diplomats would come at a tense time, with tough rhetoric in play over tariffs, WTO rules, and influence over the Panama Canal. China's permanent representative to the UN, Fu Tong, admits there's much at stake, but says knee-jerk reactions need to stop. Salvage crews near Washington, D.C. have recovered an engine and other parts of a passenger plane involved in a mid-air collision with an Army helicopter last week. The investigation team says the lifting of debris will take several days, with victims still being found and identified. David Garrett has a story.
As the sun comes up with planes taking off from Reagan National Airport, wreckage recovery begins. What's left of Flight 5342 being hoisted up from the bottom of the Potomac River. A successful day of this painful, major and complicated salvage operation. A huge crane on a large barge was used for the lift, 5 days after the deadly mid-air collision between the American Airlines jet and an Army helicopter. The first of the two engines was found and dragged up to the surface early morning. Parts of the fuselage followed 2 hours later.
Salvage workers lifted out what appeared to be a turbine engine and a part of the main body of the jet. So far, authorities have recovered 55 of the 67 people killed in the crash and are confident they will find the remaining 12 in this stage of the recovery efforts.
A wing was lifted later, but the wreckage recovery will take time. Investigators say they will follow strict protocols and stop lifting if they locate a dead body.
During recovery and salvage operations today, additional human remains were located. These remains, as well as remains that have been recovered previously, are in the process of being positively identified by the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner of the District of Columbia.
The National Transportation Safety Board has concluded interviews with the air traffic controllers on duty at the time of the collision. Staffing levels at the tower have come under scrutiny in the days following the disaster, as has the altitude of the Black Hawk chopper, which Donald Trump says was flying much too high.
I think it's important for us to not speculate, because there are all kinds of reasons that you could deviate from an altitude. You know, something as simple as a flock of birds is in front of you, or you may deviate if you see something that's an obstacle.
Authorities are clear and determined. These people say they must find out precisely what caused the deadliest US air incident since 2001. David Garrett, TVB News.
There's currently a mass exodus from the Greek island of Santorini, with an increase in seismic activity, raising concerns that a big, powerful earthquake could be coming. Hundreds of small tremors have been detected under the sea in recent days, the largest measured at magnitude 4.9. Experts say the quakes are not linked to Santorini's 3 active volcanoes. Islanders evacuated by queuing for ferries after the government sent out warnings to mobiles of potential landslides. There were long lines of cars as residents scrambled to leave. Schools have been shut down on 4 Greek islands this week. Hotels were told to drain their swimming pools. Welcome back. Last month, Hong Kong recorded nearly 200 serious or fatal flu cases. Medical experts have urged the public to receive flu inoculation, which can prevent complications. On Tuesday morning, more patients headed to public hospitals and private clinics for medical consultation. Family doctor Lan Wing-Wall said after the sudden death of Taiwanese actress Bobby Xu because of complications from flu infection, the number of inquiries and bookings for flu vaccination rose 30%. He said the city's inventory of flu jabs is enough to deal with the demand. He said the latest versions of rapid test kits could detect the different variations of flu virus, including type A or B influenza. He said the public should also take heed of the expiry date. In January, Hong Kong recorded 199 serious or fatal flu cases involving adults. 18 serious cases aged 18 to 49. 4 of them died. 36 patients were between 50 and 64 years old. 7 of them succumbed to the virus. Professor Lau Yulong, who chairs the Scientific Committee on Vaccine Preventable Diseases under the Center for Health Protection, said those traveling to places plagued by flu outbreaks such as Japan should receive a flu vaccination 2 weeks before their trip. Flu patients usually take around 5 to 6 days to recover, but if the condition remains for a week without obvious improvement, Lau said patients should take caution. He said the reasons for death over a short period are complex, which may involve underlying conditions or chronic diseases. A baby girl was dead after falling into a coma at the Lo Wu border crossing yesterday. Reportedly, the infant has suspected vomit around the mouth. Some doctors say infants are prone to vomiting and the vomit could lead to suffocation. Police received a report at about 7 p.m. on Monday night that a 5-month-old baby girl had fallen unconscious at the Lo Wu checkpoint. The infant died after resuscitation attempts failed at North District Hospital. It is understood her parents breastfed the baby in Shenzhen at 6 p.m. on Monday. The baby was then put in a baby sling on her mother's back as the family traveled to Hong Kong via the Lo Wu border crossing. When reaching the arrival hall, the parents found that the baby had fallen unconscious and sought assistance from immigration staff. The infant was rushed to hospital. It is understood that preliminary examination found suspected vomit on the side of the baby's mouth. Patrick Yip, clinical professor of the Department of Pediatrics and Adolescent Sciences at the University of Hong Kong, said the muscles of children under 6 months old are not well developed, so they mostly lie on their back, leading to reflux of milk from the stomach to the esophagus. In some serious cases, this may lead to babies choking to death on their own vomit. He's not ruling out that the baby involved may have underlying physical diseases or congenital metabolic disorders or heart disease as well. Pediatrician David Lee underscored the risks of putting a baby on your back with a sling. That's because you can't be as aware of baby's conditions, including vomiting. So it's better the infant be carried in the front. Dr. Lee added it is not recommended for babies to sleep with a pillow before the age of 1, as that could heighten suffocation risks when babies spit up milk during sleep. Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Rosanna Law said the total number of tourists in Hong Kong last month reached 4.7 million. That's the highest monthly figure after the pandemic. Over the Lunar New Year holiday, the government organized different events to attract locals and tourists, such as a festive parade and fireworks display. In a Legislative Council meeting today, Rosanna Law said 4.7 million visitors came to the city in January, with 3.3 million being mainland tourists. Both were post-pandemic highs. Law said the two figures have increased by 24% and 25% respectively. Law said the government will continue to think of new ways to entice people to come and visit the city. It's day 127 of the national security trial involving NIC's digital founder, Jimmy Lai. Lai earlier confirmed in court that U.S. officials wanted to meet with him in early 2020. The prosecution questioned that Lai was restricted from leaving Hong Kong because of another criminal intimidation case. Then he applied to visit the U.S. on the grounds that his granddaughter had just been born there. While his request was denied, the prosecution said Lai concealed his scheduled meeting with U.S. officials. The judge noted the text messages between Lai and his aide, Mark Simon, who is in the United States. Lai mentioned they only have to do what they could do here. Lai said it's about him and Simon working separately in Hong Kong and the U.S. However, he said it's not about lobbying efforts for sanctions. The airport authority is planning to launch a $100 billion airport city in the airport under the brand Skytopia. It will feature cultural, recreational, retail, and commercial attractions. Speaking on TVB's Straight Talk program, Vivian Chung, the airport authority's acting CEO, said it could entice more air travelers to spend money in the city.
For the 75 million passengers every year going through our Hong Kong airport, 30% of them are transfer passengers. And with the attraction right next to the airport, we want to attract them to come out, not just transfer inside the airport. They can spend time outside the airport. And our transfer passenger is from 2 hours to 12 hours. Of course, average is about 4 to 6 hours. And if they can, we can facilitate them. Not only go to Skytopia, they can also go to Lantau Island. We have Disneyland. And by looking at our hub, they are very interested in art development in Hong Kong. We can also introduce them to M+, and also many of the gallery in downtown. So definitely we're just a window to all of the great things into Hong Kong.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.